By the summer of 1945, World War II had already consumed millions of lives across Europe and Asia. Germany had surrendered in May, but the war in the Pacific continued. Japan was losing territory rapidly, its navy shattered, its air force depleted, and its cities increasingly destroyed by American firebombing. Still, Japan had not surrendered. The Japanese government was divided between those who believed surrender was inevitable and those who believed fighting on, even to national destruction, was preferable to accepting unconditional surrender. American planners feared that a conventional invasion of the Japanese home islands would result in catastrophic casualties on both sides. Plans for Operation Downfall projected hundreds of thousands of American casualties and potentially millions of Japanese military and civilian deaths. At the same time, a secret project begun in 1942 was nearing completion. The Manhattan Project, involving tens of thousands of scientists, engineers, soldiers, and laborers across the United States, had succeeded in producing a new weapon unlike anything ever used in war. It was based on nuclear fission, the splitting of atoms to release enormous energy. Two types of bombs were developed, one using uranium-235 and another using plutonium-239. The destructive power of these weapons was known only in theory and limited testing. No one truly understood what would happen when one was detonated over a city. On July 16, 1945, the first nuclear test, codenamed Trinity, was conducted in the New Mexico desert. The explosion exceeded expectations. Witnesses described a blinding flash, a rising fireball, and a shockwave that could be felt miles away. President Harry S. Truman, attending the Potsdam Conference in Germany at the time, was informed of the test's success. The United States now possessed a weapon capable of destroying an entire city with a single bomb. At Potsdam, Truman, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin discussed the post-war order and the ongoing war with Japan. On July 26, the United States, Britain, and China issued the Potsdam Declaration, calling on Japan to surrender unconditionally or face prompt and utter destruction. The declaration did not mention the atomic bomb. Japan's government publicly ignored the ultimatum, using the word mokusatsu, which implied withholding comment. American leaders interpreted this as rejection. Truman authorized the use of atomic weapons. The decision was framed as a military action intended to end the war quickly. Target selection committees chose cities that had not yet been heavily bombed, so the bomb's effects could be clearly measured. Hiroshima, a major military headquarters and port with a large civilian population, was selected as the primary target. Nagasaki, an industrial city with shipyards and arms factories, was selected as a secondary target. On August 6, 1945, the B-29 bomber Enola Gay took off from Tinian Island in the Mariana Islands. The aircraft carried a uranium-based atomic bomb nicknamed Little Boy. The crew had been briefed on the mission but did not fully understand the scale of destruction the weapon would cause. Weather reconnaissance planes confirmed that Hiroshima's skies were clear. Hiroshima that morning was functioning as usual. Many residents were already awake due to air raid warnings earlier in the night, which had been lifted when no attack followed. People went to work, students were mobilized for building demolition to create fire breaks, and children prepared for school. The city had a population of around 350,000. At 8:15 a.m. local time, the bomb was released from approximately 31,000 feet. It detonated about 1,900 feet above the city center. The explosion produced a flash brighter than the sun. Within a fraction of a second, temperatures at the hypocenter reached several thousand degrees Celsius. People directly beneath the blast were vaporized instantly. Human bodies, clothing, and structures disintegrated. A massive fireball expanded outward, followed by a shockwave traveling faster than the speed of sound. Buildings within a 2-kilometer radius were flattened. Concrete structures cracked, steel frames twisted, and wooden houses were obliterated. Fires erupted everywhere, ignited by the intense heat and overturned cooking stoves. A massive firestorm developed, consuming oxygen and pulling in winds that spread the flames further. Approximately 70,000 to 80,000 people were killed instantly. Many more were injured, burned, or crushed under debris. Survivors later described scenes of complete devastation. Streets were filled with rubble and bodies. People wandered aimlessly, their skin hanging in strips, their clothes burned away. Some had been blinded permanently by the flash. Radiation, an invisible and poorly understood force at the time, began affecting survivors almost immediately. Those who seemed uninjured fell ill within hours or days. Symptoms included nausea, vomiting, hair loss, internal bleeding, and extreme weakness. Medical facilities in Hiroshima had been destroyed or severely damaged, and most doctors and nurses were dead or injured. That evening, fires continued to burn uncontrollably. Thousands sought refuge near rivers, collapsing into the water to escape the heat. Many drowned. Others died slowly from burns and radiation exposure. Communication with the outside world was severed. Tokyo did not immediately understand what had happened. Initial reports spoke of a single bomb destroying the city, which seemed impossible by conventional standards. In the days following the bombing, survivors began dying in large numbers. By the end of 1945, the death toll in Hiroshima had risen to approximately 140,000. Long-term effects would continue for decades. Cancer rates increased significantly. Birth defects and chronic illnesses became widespread. Survivors, later known as hibakusha, faced discrimination, stigma, and lifelong health problems. Despite the destruction of Hiroshima, Japan did not immediately surrender. Within the Japanese leadership, debate continued. Some hoped the Soviet Union might broker a conditional peace. Others believed one devastating blow did not change the overall military situation. On August 8, 1945, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan and invaded Japanese-held territory in Manchuria. This development shocked Japanese leaders, eliminating any hope of Soviet mediation. Meanwhile, preparations were underway for a second atomic attack. The plutonium-based bomb, Fat Man, was assigned to a different B-29 bomber, Bockscar. The primary target was Kokura, with Nagasaki as the secondary target. On August 9th, Bockscar took off carrying the bomb. Weather over Kokura was poor, with cloud cover and smoke obscuring the target. After multiple passes, the crew diverted to Nagasaki. Fuel levels were low.
This fuel gauge is worrying me. We're running low and I don't think Kokura's clearing up. Should we reconsider the mission?
And the mission was close to aborting entirely. Nagasaki was partially obscured by clouds, but a break appeared briefly. At 11:02 a.m., the bomb was released. It detonated at an altitude of about 1,650 feet above the Urakami Valley. The terrain of Nagasaki, surrounded by hills, limited the blast somewhat compared to Hiroshima, but the destruction was still immense. The explosion generated extreme heat and a powerful shockwave. Industrial facilities, homes, churches, and hospitals were destroyed. The Urakami Cathedral, one of the largest Christian churches in East Asia, was obliterated. An estimated 35,000 to 40,000 people were killed instantly. By the end of 1945, total deaths in Nagasaki were estimated between 60,000 and 80,000. As in Hiroshima, radiation sickness spread among survivors. Medical infrastructure was destroyed, and survivors lacked food, shelter, and treatment. In Nagasaki, some people survived because hills shielded them from the blast. Others survived only to suffer long-term effects similar to those seen in Hiroshima. Children orphaned by the bombing wandered the ruins. Mass cremations were conducted to prevent disease, as burial was impossible for so many dead. The psychological impact was profound. Survivors described a sense that the world had ended. Some believed the sun itself had fallen from the sky. Rumors spread that the land was poisoned forever. On August 10th, Japan's government began serious discussions about surrender. Emperor Hirohito who had rarely intervened directly in political decisions, became involved. Despite opposition from military leaders who wanted to continue fighting, the emperor decided that surrender was necessary to prevent further destruction. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito addressed the nation by radio. It was the first time most Japanese citizens had ever heard his voice. He announced that Japan would accept the terms of the Potsdam Declaration. World War II effectively ended. What happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was not a single moment of destruction, but a prolonged human tragedy. The bombs killed instantly, then continued killing through radiation, disease, and long-term illness. Entire families disappeared. Communities were erased. Survivors carried physical and psychological wounds for the rest of their lives. The bombings marked a turning point in human history. They demonstrated that humanity had developed the capacity to destroy itself on an unprecedented scale. The legacy of those days continues to shape global politics, ethics, and fears to this day. Nothing about the events was abstract to those who lived through them. It was heat, light, sound, pain, loss, and silence. The world did not end on August 6th or August 9th, 1945, but it changed forever. If this story helped you understand history more deeply, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next historical event.